you're only supposed to blow the bloody doors off.
Well, it's great to have you, but I got to say, you're a bit shorter in person. Did you have to climb a step stool to get on this chair?
This is the BBC. In line with the wishes of the British government to see as much carnage as possible because it's really, really funny, places of entertainment will not be closed even though war has just been declared. The Prime Minister will address the nation again at 9:30 tonight. For those interested, he will be wearing a pink dress, a poncho and a wide-brimmed hat with "Beware of the Leopard" printed across the top in large, friendly letters.
It's a lot of work.
Oh, well, work is hard.
You're not really listening to me, are you?
Uh-huh.
I mean, I could say anything right now, like, you're a complete tool.
Mm-hmm.
But you wouldn't hear it, 'cause you're a freak with a microphone.
Uh-huh.
It's not even challenging anymore. It's like shooting fish in a barrel. Isn't that true, Sphincter Boy?
Uh-huh. What? Oh! They're getting closer all the time. All right, good information about Wayne Stock. Very exciting. We'll be back with more right after Pig Sports. Right now, it's 16 minutes past the big hour. Is that not right, Mr. Scream?
Well, a naked man is chasing a woman through an alley with a butcher knife and a heart on. I figure he isn't out collecting for the Red Cross. Well, I'm all broken up about that man's run.
Oh, right to the spine.
Is everybody in? Is everybody in? Is everybody in? The ceremony is about to begin.
Lady, I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to leave the store. Lady, I'm afraid I'm going to have to ask you to leave the store.
I kill demons, not people.
Bullshit!
Unless those people are demons who look like people. And then I kill people.
Don't bullshit me.
Bullshit.
Bullshit. Bullshit. Bullshit.
Bullshit! You said so!
Today's special presentation is brought to you in Wrestle Vision by the Macho Man. Oh, yeah. Turn around. Once again, I'm back again. What do you think of that, big man? Cream of the crop, rising to the top. Okay, so I'm doing a impromptu live special. A little bit of secret behind the curtain knowledge, Wizard of Oz style. Usually this time of the week is when me and Mark do the pre-record on the Booba Joe Show weekly podcast. We're up to episode 70 something. We've done well over a year, week to week. without any gaps, but this is like the first gap. However, he's had a power outage, not his fault. The stormy weather and whatnot has knocked out a power line, which actually happens a fuckload in this area where we live in Spearwell. We've got gum trees everywhere that knock out power lines, and other places I've lived. When I lived in East Victoria, it used to happen all the time there too for different reasons. I was on the same grid as the power station. But anyhow, I'm doing a solo live hangout. There will still be another regular weekly Boba Joe in the next 24 to 48 hours when the power's all good there again. And we will be talking about Beach Blast 1992 WCW wrestling from down in the south. That's right. But I thought for an impromptu live chat, I've got to pick a topic. Done a few toy ones. Let's do something different. What are we doing? What's going on? Streets of Rage, Streets of Fire, Final Fight, Street Fighter 2. What do those all have in common? Well, for one thing, I'm talking about them right now in the same sentence. But other than that, there's a whole bunch of interlinked ideas, character concepts, visual styles, and aesthetic, if you want to be a wanky bastard and use words like that. And frankly, I do. So we will. We'll get into it. And I'm going to do this like a Monday style hangout, like 30, 40 minute thing. I'm not going to be here for hours and hours because that would be crazy and irresponsible. I like to be on topic when we're doing Boba Joe show. Mark is the often the expert in the topics we do. I'm like the dude that puts the shows together and kind of does a bit of research and stuff. And then on the day, I conveniently forget everything and I get like a brain fugue state like Walt and I forgot the name of the show now. Breaking Bad. It was there in my mind and I was like I couldn't bring it up. But it's not just my demented brain, it's because I'm having inadequacies, which is the wrong word, brought on by the very thing I'm trying to describe. There's basically no B12 in my body. You need it for everything from mental processing to building bones and tissue and nerves and everything in your body. I'm having a chronic issue with my gut where it's not absorbing. I have been taping. Yeah, I've been illegally dumping vitamins. No, taking some oral supplements that dissolve in your tongue. My mum recommended, and hopefully it'll help with the like brain fugue states that old Walter gets like in Breaking Bad. He did fake that state, of course. But yeah, I go from my usual fucking manic up here into these like diving down, just like if you've ever been awake for 48 to 50 hours, like non-stop, which I have several times in my life, your plane travel and stuff like that, time zones. If you've ever experienced that and your brain is literally falling asleep, but the rest of your body's fine and wants to walk around and do things, but your brain is going, fuck off, fuck you, cunt. That's what I've been experiencing like all the last 7 days and most of the last month and week. My brain just starts falling asleep at my feet, and then I pass through it, and I've been getting through it, having extra caffeine and other shit. But anyhow, what we're doing, a live chat. Streets of Fire, Streets of Rage, Final Fight, Street Fighter 2. What's the connection? Let's look into it. Now, if you're not sure about what one of those things are, because some of those things are video games, one of them is a movie influenced the later video games. Let's have a look at the little images and timeline here. We have, let's skip ahead to, here we go, timeline. So first of all, we had in chronological order, and as far as the influences and things that are interrelated here, we've got the Warriors come out to play in 1979. We had Streets of Fire in 1984. Street Fighter, as in numero uno dos, the number one. Street Fighter in 1987 from Capcom. We had Final Fight in 1989, also known as Street Fighter 89, which I'll get into. It's a whole other thing. It was in advertising and video game print magazines of the time. Then we had Street Fighter 2, The World Warrior in 1991 from Capcom. Probably the most well-known thing here, other than Streets of Rage from Sega, also in 1991, which was heavily influenced by the arcade Street Fighter, but of course was a home console port for the Sega Genesis / Mega Drive in European and Australian, New Zealand territories. But yeah, certainly the most well-known thing of all of these things is Street Fighter as a brand. Although Streets of Rage was very popular in the 90s as well. But Street Fighter 2 in the arcade was a massive blowout hit. It was just so popular. People were lining up to play it. And World Warrior was an amazing game with like big chunky sprites. You had these health bars up the top and whatnot. You had 6 buttons, which is like pretty epic as far as controls and button combinations. You had combos in a fighting game, which is kind of the first for its time, but a lot of them were accidental and not programmed intentionally, but were in basically a side effect of the programming and the way the game played. You could do like a standing light or medium punch and cancel into a hard or fierce rising dragon, otherwise known as a dragon punch. And you could do like things like jump in, fierce kick, crouching medium into fireball, and that was like a 3-hit combo. And in World Warrior, you could do combos that would kill someone like 2 or 3, a few hits. Like you could do about 3 lots of combos and basically take someone's whole life bar away. Because it was fairly unbalanced of course, for the time. But this is really early days for one-on-one versus fighting games. Stuff before this was very, very primitive. You had other various arcade games that were quite simplistic and home console ports and the old C64, Nintendo Entertainment System, Master and shit like that. But anyhow, let's look at the lineage or what was going on as far as influences and stuff. And we'll kick off with Street Fighter 89, which is kind of the linchpin of what, to me, ties some of these things together. Regardless of the chronological order of everything I'm going to talk about here, this is kind of the one that gave me the idea, let's do a Boba Joe show about this, which we'll still be doing sometime next year. We'll do a proper actual show on some of these games and the Streets of Fire movie itself, as well as like a special on basically what I'm doing here in an abbreviated version. Impromptu abbreviated version. Street Fighter 89 was a project that started off as one thing and ended up splitting off into 2 different projects. It became both Final Fight, which we know very well, is a side-scrolling arcade brawler beat-em-up thing. Like you can play 2 simultaneous players. You had 3 characters. We had Cody, Hagar, and Guy. And the other project became Street Fighter 2, following on from Street Fighter 2 was a World Warrior, following on from the original Street Fighter, which was a very, very primitive game, very unresponsive in its controls and its combinations and attacks. It had a real broken rhythm to it. It was still an enjoyable game to play, but many things were quite wrong. Street Fighter 2, they kind of perfected the formula, which carried over to Champion Edition, Hyper/Turbo Edition, new challenges, into the Alpha series, into the Marvel X-Men vs. Street Fighter, Marvel vs. Capcom, all the way up to Street Fighter 4 to the present day. Street Fighter 3 became its own sub-brand or reboot with the different mechanics and whatnot. But yeah, absolutely brilliant. Brilliant mechanics, brilliant sprites, very responsive on-screen buttons when you're smashing away, like arcade buttons like this. You could be tapping them, smashing them. Very responsive on the old like jammer cabs. And an amazing game, the original Final Fight. But here we are looking at this logo, Street Fighter, very familiar, very familiar, but it's Street Fighter 89. And yet clearly the game on the screen is Final Fight. So what's going on there? So it became these 2 different projects, and we've got this whole bunch of cool sprites here. I might leap ahead for a minute because I've got a bigger image here. We've got there we go. Street Fighter 89. This was one of the in-print video game magazines advertisements of the time. It was in video game magazines, but it was also sent out to like arcades or arcade owner licensees, whatever, both Japan and international, for this is your coming attraction for something that's coming up. Do you want to buy this thing? Do you want to get this in your arcade, etc.? This was the teaser. So we get a little bit of artwork. We've got the character that eventually became Cody in that artwork there, but there's no face on him. It's very It's almost like a little thumbnail sketch for a comic book sort of thing. There's not a lot of detail in there, but we do get screenshots of the actual game. And, you know, it's called Street Fighter 89 because that was the year, 1989, and eventually became known as Final Fight. And it went on to be one of the most amazing side-scrolling beat-em-up games ever created. And it was the quintessential side-scrolling beat-em-up game that influenced everything that came after it in the next decade, basically, both from Capcom itself as well as other imitators, other programmers, other development houses, whether it was Sega or Konami, whoever, were very heavily influenced by the original Final Fight. And there were several key things it did. It had a movement system where you're walking forwards and backwards, up and down on, you know, horizontal and vertical plane, not just one plane, like earlier games like, say, Vigilante only had one plane of movement. We had, or Shinobi, for example, you kind of had two planes, you jumped to the background, but it was still one horizontal plane in that sense. You had a move set of basic punches, and if you kept pressing punch, turned into a combo. You had special throws for all three characters who could do a basic, like, over-the-shoulder throw, like Cody and Guy. Or if you chose Hagar, you could do a suplex as well as the spinning pile driver move that was later repurposed for Zangief and Street Fighter. We had very memorable stages and boss battles. We had weapons we could pick up, like swords, and then we had the old street food, like you had the old roast chicken or turkey and pizza. You had food that, like, came out of a garbage can that would pick up for a health pickup. Don't do it in real life, but in video games it will absolutely power you up. And we had things like Andore and Andore Jr., who were clearly based on the 1970s Andre the Giant, where he's got his big sort of afro hair and he's a very tall, massive man. And just amazing sprite set, amazing move set, great character designs, great color schemes, very distinctive, like your 1970s Marvel Comics, where we've got iconic colors where you see Cody in the blue jeans and the white singlet or wife beater and the blonde hair. You see Hagar in his big, like, pants and brown shoes. The color schemes themselves are shorthand for the characters. So that went on to influence so many other games and other designs and things that came after this. So let's check out the next image here. Streets of Rage, like the original Final Fight and Streets of Rage series, which picked up number 2 and 3, the kind of definitive games. The original one was an amazing game that's really set the tone and style of the Streets of Rage series. The Yuzo Koshiro soundtrack, and there was other people worked on it as well, as far as the music and games and graphics and art design. There's a lot of people contribute to these games. Amazing game series. Again, picked up the Final Fight, like punch, combo, arcade, brawler style, but brought it home to a home console and let you play an arcade style game that, instead of being a sort of lesser conversion as we tended to get in the 8-bit and 16-bit, like NES, Master System, Mega Drive, Super Nintendo, we often got the cut down versions of arcade games. Like Final Fight itself had a very rubbish version on the first Super Nintendo, and when we got to Final Fight 2, we got a bit game that had more characters and such. Konami, of course, did home ports of Ninja Turtles games, but they were always kind of missing a bit of something. And even the very best version, as good as they were, like Turtles in Time on Super Nintendo, was kind of their best one. It was still not up to graphical par for the arcade, missing some of the frames of animation and things like this. There was always shortcuts to be made in animation, memory, character moveset, and yada yada. But Streets of Rage was an original game. Didn't exist in the arcade, but was influenced by the arcade style, Double Dragon, Vigilante, Final Fight. And so, but working within the chipset and the memory of the Mega Drive. And of key importance within the sound set of the Yamaha chipset, that was really, they developed an amazing soundtrack amazing soundtrack that sounded good on the original hardware. It sounds good if you play it in like a Chiptunes concert, and it also still sounds good to this day for the entire series of Streets of Rage 1, 2, and 3. Always in my sort of playlist. I have them saved in multiple formats to listen to different devices. I still regularly play the games. The soundtrack itself went on to influence. It went on to not only be part of 90s club culture and electronic music, but actually influenced other styles and genres within the. I mean, we think of video game music as chiptunes, but if we go back to the actual core music that was in the 90s at the time, that was both influenced and part of this game, we had things like Gabba, dubstep, generically electronic music or club music. There's a lot of genres and styles were being established at this time, and then when innovated upon and became other subgenres of the broad category of electronic music, which is a massive category if you want to go right back to the 70s and like Giorgio Moroder and disco into like Chemical Brothers and Junkie XL and all kinds of like amazing artists over the years. This really is a very diverse field. But yeah, the original Streets Rage, amazing game. It's my biggest criticisms is that the original game plays quite slowly. The speed of it's a bit slow. The way you move, the sprites are quite small. When we get to the second game of the series, the sprites are bigger, more like the arcade Final Fight. It moves faster, and more importantly, everything just flows. The combos, the movement, the boss battles, the stage design, the layout, the music soundtrack, everything just flows along. I mean, it's like watching early Bruce Lee movies, which are really fantastic. You watch later Bruce movies where he's writing, he's directing, he's acting in it, he's doing stunt choreography in it, he's doing choreography work not only for himself but for other people in the film. Everything just flows along. So you watch his later films and it's just like, holy shit, this guy's amazing. That's what it feels like when you get to Streets Rage 2 and 3. They're just like, this is like something with great promise, great visual and art design, amazing aesthetic, great music, great animations, colors, everything's just like fantastic. And then it's like turns it up to 11, number 2 or 3. It's just like banging along. Amazing games, amazing soundtrack. So getting on to Streets of Fire. Now, for anyone who's never heard of Streets of Fire, Zazel Clubhouse, has he heard of it? Maybe not. We'll find out. Stay tuned. Retro Tinker, we don't know. We will find out. Hello, fellas. So if anyone has never heard of Streets of Fire, I'm going to read out a little blurb. And I'm cheating because I haven't got it. Because this is an impromptu show, I don't have any pre-existing notes. I'm speaking off the cuff. But I'm going to read a quick blurb from Wikipedia just so I can give you the short version, not ramble on too long. So Streets of Fire, 1984 American action crime neo-noir film. So you got a mishmash of genres to start with. Directed by Walter Hill, legendary filmmaker. For anyone that's a cinephile, you know who the fuck Walter Hill is. And if you don't, go and fucking look him up. From a screenplay by Hill and Larry Gross. Described on the poster and the opening credits as a rock and roll fable, which it truly is. It's an action movie and it's a rock and roll musical movie, and it fucking kicks ass. The film combines elements of the automobile culture and music from the 1950s. So think of, I don't know, like your early George Lucas and shit like that, with the fashion style and sociology of the 1980s, starring Michael Pere, Diane Lane, Rick Moranis, Amy Madigan, Willem Dafoe, and full-on Demento mode, as he's known, Deborah Van Valkenburg, E.G. Daly, and Bill Paxton. The film follows Tom Cody and McCoy as they embark on a mission to rescue Cody's ex-girlfriend, Ellen Lane, who was kidnapped by Raven Shaddock, who is Willem Dafoe, the leader of an outlaw motorcycle gang called the Bombers. Streets of Fire was released in United States June 1st, 1984. To mixed reviews from critics, was a box office failure, grossing $8 million against its $14.5 million budget. So Addendum there has gone on to become a cult classic. I've only picked up the Blu-ray in the last 6 months. I was very fortunate to watched this film for the first time in the last 5 years off a dodgy torrent. Then I got Blu-ray. I've been aware of it for a long time, but never had the option to see it. It was never in any VHS rental store in the 80s, 90s when I was a kid. It's an American film, was not available in New Zealand. Zazel saying hello to the old Nate. Richard Tinker, Nate, Streets of Rage of Perfection. The soundtrack is really good. Yeah, I listen to it constantly, and I love all forms of electronic music, from like EDM, club, dubstep, techno, trance, house, and every other fucking gabba and every other variation you care to think of. And mostly because of Streets of Rage. And if I'm going to pick another game, probably Wipeout and PlayStation had like Chemical Brothers, Junkie XL, had fucking like, Firestarter from Prodigy and all that. Probably those two games. Actually, Need for Speed 4 had a lot of those guys as well. Really influenced my love of like club and electronic music. Say hello to the Zazonetta. Bloody loves Streets of Rage. He bloody well did, mates. Stupid girlfriends. Always getting kidnapped. Just got their locks done down at the old dye jobs, and then they get kidnapped by some weirdo. Which one starts with the girlfriend getting slugged in the guts? Double Dragon, maybe. Well, I'll go one better. It starts with Streets of Fire, this movie here. Double Dragon and Streets of Fire. Streets of Fire, Streets of Rage, and Final Fight all pinched from this movie. So when we get to doing a Boba Joe show next year, I'm also going to include Double Dragon, because it's also the other one that's not mentioned here, because I'm kind of doing a shorter, redacted version of events. But we'll also include Double Dragon. Yeah, very memorably, old Double Dragon was like, psh, psh, psh. You get punched in the gut, and then they steal the girl at the start, and the garage roller door comes up, and it's like ding, 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 and you see those weird, tall, skinny sprites of old Billy and Jimmy, and off they go. Actually, at the end of this presentation, I'll talk about some fan games and like fan-made versions of stuff. But what's not in there that I was playing last week, there's an awesome fan version that combines the 80s WWF WrestleMania, the 2D one where you're fighting one-on-one that has 6 characters, not the later one that has a lot more characters. There's a wicked fan version of that. That's the original Double Dragon with the full roster of the WWF WrestleMania, which is like Hogan, Honky Tonk, Macho Man, Andre, and that. So I was playing last week the original Double Dragon with Andre, and when you get to like a Bobo, who's the big African-American guy who bursts out of the wall halfway through the first stage, where he's like, phew, and it's like, holy shit, this guy's big. When you play as Andre, you're taller than that guy on the screen. You start smashing the shit out of it. Fantastic fan version that's free to play. You just get like a USB controller off eBay and play it on a computer or laptop or whatever. Awesome version. It is indeed Double Dragon. Will we see that? I bloody love Double Dragon. I bloody well did. Yeah. My earliest memory of Double Dragon was in primary school. I used to go play it after school sometimes. I was never great at it. If you want to cheese your way through the entire game, you have to learn to the 2-button move where he does the elbow, and you just walk and just keep doing the elbow over and over again to virtually every enemy in the game and don't get hit. And there was a kid who was like bleeding on his lower shin, and he was flicking it all over the machine, and anyone was standing around him. One time after school, I was watching him play it, and he kept flicking blood off his leg all over the shade, ever around. And that's what, whenever I think of Double Dragon, I think of that dude. And that same dude, this is when we were like 8 or 9. When he was 18, he was in prison for doing robberies. But his parents were known for being druggos and whatnot. But anyway, pretty relevant for this sort of talk, I think. For I ain't got time to bleed, says Hazel. But anyway, this here is Michael Perry on the screen. Sip of the old. I had a bit of whiskey, but now I've got ginger ale, water, whiskey, 1/3 to sort of taper off and not dry my throat out too much. You've got Michael Perry here. He was the inspiration for not only, well, probably Billy, Jimmy, as well as these guys, for Cody and Axel. And the most blatantly obvious one in Final Fight, Cody is called Cody. That's what you call evidence, because he's named after the same character in this film. And in the original Final Fight, you can see he's got the darker brown hair, the jeans, and the wife beater. The main difference in Axel, he's got the blonde hair If we're going to another character in here that's generically kind of related, you would say Ken from Street Fighter 2. He's like the all-American, but he's also got the blonde hair like Axel, but a bit different. Then we've got old Willem Dafoe. In this movie, he wears these kind of like overalls with like overalls into these strappy singlet things with the bare chest and the slicker greaser hair. And I forget the name of this actual bad guy in Final Fight because they've all got names and when you're punching them all that. But you can see he's wearing the exact same actual outfit, like the straps, the grey, and basically everything. So you can see it's pretty much Michael Piro and Willem Dafoe here, except in Final Fight we get Cody and whatever this dude's name is. So those are two direct inspirations straight out of Streets of Fire, then, of that movie. Moving on from that, we get Ellen, as she's known in Streets of Fire, played by Diane Lane, who looks absolutely stunningly sensational in this film. The opening scene in Streets of Fire, if you haven't watched it, I highly recommend watching it. It's a brilliant film. It has its flaws, but it's so enjoyable. It's definitely in the style of like a B movie or a grindhouse film, except that it's also a rock musical. And in the last act, they have a sledgehammer fight. And it's like, if that's not enough to get you involved, then fuck off. She directly inspired, of course, Blaze in Streets of Rage. Because Final Fight, we were all about the bros and the bro love, and we had three guys. Streets of Rage, of course, we got Blaze, who's rather sensational character and very good moveset. And she has all the luxurious hair and, of course, the red color scheme, very much inspired or perhaps stolen from Diane Lane and Streets of Fire. There were very overt influences going to these games. This is like fan love. People working on these video games very much love these like films and some of the American culture and style they put into them. As they were saying, that's a crossover we need. They got time to bleed. I've never seen the film. Yeah, I've only watched it in the last 5 years, despite being... But I read video game magazine articles in the 90s talking about this film, talking about how it... Basically what I'm talking about now. And I was like, oh, how much did it influence it? When you watch the film, you're like, holy crap, this is pretty amazing. I've actually got a clip preloaded I'm going to play in a minute, so we'll get a little bit further on. I'm going to play a clip, and you'll see some of the footage from the film. And how did I get away with it? Because I sped it up. So it doesn't. And I've already uploaded it months ago as a trailer. It's sped up. Excuse me. My lungs are not doing good this week. And it's got music from Streets of Rage. So if you like their music, I'm going to play that in a minute. But yeah, I'm going to check out that clip in a minute. Here we've got the old logos. Streets of Fire, Streets of Rage, Final Fight. Sega did the old Streets of Rage series, of course. Capcom did the Final Fight series. There are some other cool influences here. And as we get into the series, Streets of Rage 1 and 2 both have the same Abadidi boss, who was clearly based on the Ultimate Warrior, for anyone that loves 80s wrestling. The first time you get to this guy, you're like, that's the Ultimate Warrior, all right, when you see him. And I can't say for sure, but I'm like 98% confident Hagar is clearly based on Jesse the Body Ventura, especially when you think of like Predator era Jesse the Body. Come on, that's fucking Hagar, man. Look at him. It's so obviously based on him. Hagar's the original Final Fight always played as Hagar. You could legitimately say he's overpowered, because if you can play him well, like Cody and Guy are a bit fast. Guy's the fastest. Cody's the all-rounder middle guy. Hagar is only slightly slower than the other guys. He's got a really good range on his punch that goes third of the way across the screen. And you can just suplex and pole drive guys all day. And when you get into the rhythm where you walk up, suplex a guy, punch a guy, jump kick a guy, grab a guy, you know the next ones are going to spawn. You're going to pile drive across the screen. If you hold the joystick, you move. He jumps up and you control the spinning pile driver like Zangief across the screen. And you land on top of the guys who are spawning, doing damage to them. And as soon as one gets up, you grab him and suplex them into the next guy who's doing more damage. didn't go into politics. Well, in the first game, he's actually the mayor, but this predates Ventura ever being like the governor and what's the name. So it's way before that. But yeah, that's also another thing you could. Maybe it's like precognition, like Minority Report. It's like they knew one day this fictional character based on an actual wrestler back in the 70s, 80s would one day in the future become a political. But yeah, he's the mayor. In the original final fight, it's his daughter Jessica who gets, also named my sister, Jessica, who gets kidnapped. But my sister's never been kidnapped, by the way. And then I forget the name of the ones in Double Dragon, but you got the kidnap thing there. And then I don't think they have the kidnap thing, but in Street Fighter, Ken's girlfriend is Eliza again, the same kind of like blonde bimbo girlfriend, same sort of deal again. But I'm not going anywhere. I'm there right here, but I'm going to play a clip now. This is footage from the Streets of Fire movie. So anyone such as Zayda who has not seen it, you're going to enjoy seeing some cool footage, which is the opening of the movie, the concert. But I've changed all the audio to Streets of Rage soundtrack. And I've got bits of footage from both these games intercut, showing you just kind of how related they are in style and influence. So check out this clip. I'm staying here. I'll be reading the comments. I'm not going anywhere. but yeah, hopefully that was kind of obvious watching that clip, like how much they that Streets of Fire movie has influenced these video games, even down to some of the like level design and elements of it. When we get to, I'm going to skip ahead and I'll come back here. I was thinking of a particular scene that was in that clip. Check out this subway here. Like the opening of the movie is Cody getting off the like subway, which is clearly like a 1970s style New York subway car. And the other thing that was a big influence on this, of course, if we go back, was the Warriors. And the Warriors, like when he gets off that subway car, it's kind of two things. It's we get the subway stage in Final Fight, which is in Streets of Fire, where he's literally, it's the opening of the movie. He gets on, we see him exiting off a New York subway car. But the fighting part of Final Fight is from like the Warriors, like, you know, traveling across town and all the gangs and all the weirdos and the outfits and all this stuff come out to play. Yeah. So yeah, we get like movie poster here for Warriors and one for Streets of Fire, which is like one of the foreign European release ones, which is some really cool artwork and designs on there. So it was really cool, kind of tracing like the DNA of influences of like all of these things, like all of these games I've played a lot of. I've watched these films at different times. I had no idea of the correlation and related elements or influences until I read an article sometime in the 90s in video game magazines, kind of talking them up and other things since. And then going back and looking for myself and seeing and replaying the games, rewatching movies, going, oh man, seeing like how much actual influence and style came from these things and what was in there and what wasn't. Here we've got a nice sprite chart sheet from Final Fight series, and then on the right from the Streets of Rage series. Different character designs, but like all in that kind of 16-bit style aesthetic. Hagar, Cody, Guy, Andore Jr., Abigail, Rolento, all the punks. One of the things that definitely carried over from Final Fight straight into Streets of Rage was the punks, who in Final Fight you've got 2P and you've got Jay, who are in the kind of orange and green and like the jacket and the kind of like spiky, like mohawk sort of hair. In Streets of Rage and the opening stage of that, we fight the exact same punks. So it's like, for anyone who ever played Final Fight in the arcade and you're playing Streets of Rage at home, you're like, that's the same dude from the first stage. It's like, wow. It was just really cool. But both games had their own style, had their own look and feel, moveset. Capcom has a very particular style for their arcade game music, whereas Streets of Rage was fully like club music, like kind of dub and gabber and speed and noise, not the drug speed, but the music subgenre of electronic called speed and noise, which is basically like, you know, sped up other electronic music and kind of like almost kind of like refiltered and feedback kind of stuff, like Hendrix in the 70s would do like feedback stuff with the guitar, and that's like that kind of thing, but for electronic music. But yeah, both games have their own amazing style, sprite style, stage outlaying, moveset, and all that. And both I keep going back to, like the original Final Fight, amazing, still plays so well today. I've got it on my PS4, I still play it regularly. Streets of Rage, I pretty much go with 2 and 3. Occasionally I'll play the first one on the old Mega Drive Genesis collection. It's on PS4, PS3, and other consoles. Still plays so amazingly well. Yeah, that dude looks like a lot like Andre, probably because he's directly based on an Andre the Giant from the 70s, where he's got the afro hair. So, and all they did is change him from Andre to Andore, which still sounds very French. Of course, they got the old boss battles like Rolento and Sodom, the samurai dude who would turn up later on the Street Fighter Alpha series as playable characters. But really cool, fantastic designs and all that. Skip ahead here. Getting on to, we had Street Fighter, the original Street Fighter, also Street Fighter 1. Had a whole bunch of different stuff in there. We got Mike, who was clearly based on Mike Tyson, as well as Mike was basically recycled into Street Fighter 2 as Balrog. It was originally called M. Bison, but M. Bison was too similar to Mike Tyson, which is why we got the language name swaps from Japanese to English, where they swapped around Vega, M. Bison, Sagat, and all that. But yeah, the original Mike, who was a boxer, and then in Street Fighter 2, we got Balrog, of course, who was, again, still looks like Mike Tyson. This artwork here on the left is quite cool, from some European Commodore 64 versions of the original Street Fighter. And I chucked it in there because you can see that's clearly going back to this kind of like warrior style again, but filtered through a kind of like UK artist of the time. and as it relates to the video game, basically not at all like a lot of sort of like early 8-bit systems, C64, Master System, NES would often have artwork. Mega Man comes to mind, especially the American Mega Man artwork. They would have crazy artwork that didn't really relate to the game, and they're kind of trying to sell it to you, and the artwork would never match the actual graphics of the system of the time. And sometimes the artwork was just completely bonkers, but it's more like two things, really. It's like Vigilante and like other early games that preceded Double Dragon. It's like that kind of style, as well as the Warriors, that 70s style, which they were influenced by. And here they're talking up the pressure-sensitive pads on the original Street Fighter. Before it had buttons, it actually had these big giant circle things that were pressure-sensitive pads. I've only seen once ever in my life an arcade that was way across the town back in Christchurch in Linwood. And I didn't get to play it at the time, but I saw it. And I was like, what the fuck is this thing? When I got to play it several years later, it was at a local chip shop, and it had normal buttons, so you could just press the buttons. And the pressure pads were meant to be, like, if you press it harder, you get the harder hit, but it was very dodgy as far as how it actually worked. It was not very accurate at all. So I'm glad I got to play the chip shop version with the normal buttons. And the original Street Fighter 1, because it appeared at a chip shop that was like a 5-minute walk from my house when I was still in school, in high school, I would play it all the time. This was after Street Fighter 2 was out. They would have old games. They would have, they had Shinobi there for a while. They had Aliens from Konami. They had their first Street Fighter. I'd go down there like once or twice a week. It was 20 cents. I'd get 50 cents of chips, and you wait for your chips, you'd play the game. I played Street Fighter 1 regularly, and I would regularly like play it on 1 credit and finish it, because it was actually a pretty easy game once you knew a few tricks and all that. Very flawed game, though. Very flawed. Was the basis for what came after. You could play as Ryu on the 1-player side. If you put the credit in the 2-player side, you would actually play as Ken, but you'd be facing on the right side of the screen, and it was a bit awkward. The moves were janky as hell. Trying to actually do a Dragon Punch or Fireball, any consistency, it didn't work half the time because of the way they programmed the inputs and all that. And Ryu has like red hair, not black, in the original one, which is weird. The bonus stage was cool. The bonus stage, you would smash a bunch of buttons and then go, "Hard!" and they would smash like a big block of, I don't know, like cement or concrete or blocks or whatever the hell it was. And one of the cool things is that bonus stage, Mortal Kombat by Midway, they pinched that bonus stage from Street Fighter 1, where it goes from being the fighting game to being a big zoom in of your dude facing the screen, and you're smashing the buttons like track and field, Konami style, as fast as you can. And if you press them crazy fast, you'll go and hit it. And then Mortal Kombat, I think they called it like the chop bonus stage, and you'll hit like rock and steel, diamond, and some other bullshit. But that came from Street Fighter 1, and it was quite cool. And here's that Street Fighter 89 image again, which we already talked about that. Oh, here's some really cool vintage advertising. Every game is better at the chip shop. You're right about that. I'll tell you. I'll do a little sidebar here, which will probably be a whole other episode of Baby Road next year. When I was a kid back in Christchurch, right through primary school and high school, lived in Selwyn Street. We had not one, not two, but eventually 3 chip shops, a 5-minute walk from my house, and a newsagent and a lotto shop. Well, technically it was 2 newsagents, I guess, and 1 lotto shop. And other bullshit, like, I don't know, a place sold secondhand washing machines or furniture or some bullshit like that. But anyway, the chip shop, I would go there after school when games were 20 cents. Eventually they were 40 cents, later 60 cents. But I remember beginning to play like Street Fighter 2, Street Fighter Champion Edition came out. There was a time when they had Mortal Kombat 2 at the local chip shop. Shinobi, Aliens. Got to play a whole bunch of other stuff there. They would kind of rotate every 6-12 months. The original Golden Axe, I used to play with my old man once a week, Thursday night, which is Wednesday, Thursday, used to get paid. That was fish and chip night when he got paid. We'd go down there, order fish and chips. He'd give me 20 cents. I would play the original Golden Axe. Had old like Axe Battler, Julius Thunderhead, and Tyrus Flair were the 3 playable characters in that. And I would play the first stage and just like get my ass beat like real bad. But we went there every week for, I don't know, at least months on end. And every week I would play it and get 20 cents and 1 credit and I'd play it. And I'd usually die before the dinner was ready. And then I'd get a little bit better. And then the dinner was ready and I wasn't quite finished the game. And then I started going after school because my dad got annoyed where I was getting better at the game. I get stage 2, stage 3 on 1 credit. And the dinner's getting cold now. It was waiting. We've got to go home. So I started going after school. So I wasn't holding up our dinner and making it cold when I had a little bit of pocket money, a couple of bucks. And eventually, and I would watch other guys playing the game, learn all the tricks, where do enemies appear. It's a very short game. You can finish it in about 30 minutes if you know what you're doing. And eventually I got so I could just finish the whole game on 1 credit. And it might sound like a boast, but it's a relatively easy game if you play it well and learn the tricks. Double Dragon is a lot harder. I've seen guys finish that on 1 credit. That's a real achievement to get through the last stages on 1 credit. Original Double Dragon's way harder, and it's considerably longer. It's about twice the length of Golden Axe. Yep, so we're going to the chip shop. I played Double Dragon in the pub while Dad and his cricket mates had theirs. Yeah, exactly. The old and not in any way slagging off your parents or anything, but the old latchkey kid style. You know, you came home after school, you watched movies you probably weren't supposed to be watching. You played violent video games because that was the standard of the day and no one gave a shit. And we're still here. We didn't go crazy or insane from watching Hellraiser at age 13 and then enjoying Pokemon at age 18. Things were kind of in reverse there. Something was different. And then hanging out with mates after school, we'd go and play like Master System and Super Nintendo and all that. But anyway, this image on screen, in Final Fight, they're serving cocktails, Molotov cocktails. Fun bit of artwork here. We've got like the boss. I presume it's meant to be the boss from the first stage, like the big dude who jumps around with the crazy dreadlocks and laughs at you. And that's like Jessica Hagar's daughter who gets kidnapped. Those creeps, the Mad Gear Gang, have kidnapped Hagar's daughter, Jessica. Now you must head to the streets for the final fight. Use your fist and feet, as well as knives and Molotov cocktails to beat the gang. Trust no one. Even the cops have gone bad. And if you're wondering, I'm doing that like 70s dub style where nothing matches the lip sync of what's on the screen. So I love some of those dodgy dubs. But yeah, cool advertisement here going way back. And this is from some wiki here, Capcom Fandom Wiki Cody. Really good seeing a nice, decent resolution. Like this is a advertisement I remember seeing in like magazines like EGM and stuff back in the day as well as playing the actual game. Here's a screenshot here from Final Fight, but this is actually one from one of the remixed fan versions, so it looks slightly different, but just showing off all the cool punks on the subway, all the crazy 70s style spray paint tagging stuff all along there, which is very much that 70s warrior style. There's even a sense, like in that still image, of momentum, because look at the top, the little hang things, which, I mean, you know, I've only been on the bloody Melbourne trains and the Freo trains. You've got those little holder things you grab a hold of, and as the train moves and sways and stops, you hold those things or you fall the fuck over when there's a big crowd in there. But you can see they're all tilted to one side, so there's a sense of momentum in there. There's a real sense of design and aesthetic going on, even in just watching a still frame from this classic game here. Just really kick-ass stuff. Street Fighter 2 came along. We had the World Warrior and Champion Edition. This is more generically influenced by both Final Fight and Street Fighter 2 influenced Streets of Rage. Like, there's been multiple interviews where people have worked on those games and such things as like IP Publishing's Retro Gamers done several hundred issues I used to collect a number of years ago. They interviewed a lot of people who worked on these games, and the guys have said, oh no, it was absolutely influenced by Double Dragon, Vigilante, the Streets of Rage, Streets of Fire, all these things. They didn't just influence each other chronologically, but they cross-pollinated. So by the time I get into the 90s and 2000s, they've all intermingled or interbred sort of thing. So there's not like a secret anymore about what influenced what. We turned out okay. Yeah, I used to go and hang out with mates after school, or I'd go to the newsagent and get me a Elf comic or Archie Ninja Turtles Adventures and go hang out at my granddad's, drink a soda stream. He would feed me up on lollies and sugar, and I mean, I'm still there. I survived the traumatic childhood of being gifted Ninja Turtles toys and soda streams from loving grandparents. How traumatic. Just some cool early artwork here from the old Street Fighter 2 Dash, which is basically the Hyper Fighting Turbo era. Extra color schemes, extra move sets. Chun-Li gets her fireball. M. Bison gets some glowy hands. Ryu Ken gets a hurricane kick in the air. So there's some cool stuff there. And there's some really cool fan games around as far as mods of the original Final Fight and Streets of Rage. A whole bunch of really cool PC-only fan-made games that have, I mean, there's been a heap of them in the last, I want to say 20 years. There's been probably more than there is the original Streets of Rage and Final Fight games. There's just so many of them, but there's probably two or three that stand out as being really awesome, like Bomber Games did a amazing Streets of Rage remake where it's basically all the moveset from Streets of Rage 3, where it had all the vertical, horizontal running, rolling, dodging and shit, combined with all the movesets and the bosses and all the items, backgrounds and music from Streets of Rage 1, 2 and 3, all in one super amazing game. Free to download. That one's absolutely amazing. This one's one of the various fan ones. We've got Ralph from King of Fighters, one of my favorite dudes to play in that, who's Ralph and Clark with the Ikari Warriors and that old SNK arcade game, and went on to be on King of Fighters 94, 95, 96, right up through 2000 and whatnot. Really cool team with Leona, and it's great seeing these old 16-bit style graphics where they repurpose arcade game sprites into a console game such as Final Fight or Streets of Rage. Really cool fan efforts, because this genre sadly died pretty much after the year 2000. It was dead and gone. There's been a few resurrections, remakes, not just these PC ones, but actual official ones. I mean, we've got Streets of Rage 4. We've got digital versions of like Ninja Turtles, Tournament Fighters, shit like that. But it's just a drop in the hat, man. It's like not even 1% of games that come out. The genre died like 25 years ago. And we've had a few cool. The best things, if you want to play now, are basically either compilations of games from the 80s and 90s or fan versions and mods and such. This one here is like Streets of Rage 2, where you can play as like Zangief and other Street Fighter characters, and it's really fun playing as them. The sprites work just like they do in Street Fighter 2 or Champion Edition. They're really responsive. They're fast. He's got his extra like fireball dashing. He's got like a running dash in this, as well as the fireball hand, which is like an anti-projectile move from the new challenges that Zangief had. This one is from Final Fight Gold, probably one of the best fan games ever made for our side-scrolling beat-em-ups. It started out where you had characters from Final Fight 1, 2, and 3. You had some of the Street Fighters. Eventually, they expanded it over several years, so it's got all of the Street Fighter 2 characters. And then it's got the Street Fighter New Challenges characters. So basically, like I'm collecting the Jada Street Fighter characters at the moment. So you've got the original 12, which is like World Warrior and Champion Edition. Then you've got New Challenges /Super, which is like DJ, Cammy, Fei Long, and T-Hawk. And they all are the original sprites from those games. They have all the moves. They've added in little specials and supers and other nonsense. and it plays amazingly, and it's so fun to be able to play through like Final Fight with all these. You got 3, 6, 7 Final Fight characters, and then all these like 16 the Street Fighter New Challenges characters. Like, fantastic game. I can't recommend it enough. It's on. You can find it on like different sites around torrents. YouTube's often got links to them. It's been around for quite a while, but it's like it's so fun to play. It just like kind of reinvents the game, having all these extra characters. I mean, there's in Bison doing his old slidey kick there on stage 1. We've now gone from a 2-player arcade game to 3 players, and this one's actually got widescreen HD support as well, so it looks fantastic. You can play it on like 16 bits since Boba Hicks. Still no electricity here. Power is off for over 40,000, or is it 400? Is it? No, it's hard to see on this one. I want to say it's 400. 1, 2, 3. So the 40,000, 400,000 homes apparently. I was trying to read like Zangief. Final Fight Gold is good for you. Dual pile drivers and spinning nuggets to all enemies. But yeah, Final Fight Gold's amazing. Such a great, and all you need is like any modern PC, you can basically play it. You can download it for free. You grab yourself like a little cheap USB controller off like various dodgy websites, like one of these. This one's done like a Sega Saturn style controller. It's got 6 buttons, start. It's got buttons at the top and a reasonable D-pad. But yeah, like really fun to play. I'm just going to hang this up or it's going to make things fall over everything. Almost pulled over a bunch of stuff because it was hanging on a very precarious hook over there. And I haven't actually played some of these for a while. The one I was playing most recently was the original Double Dragon mod that's got the WWF roster that had like Honky Tonk Man, Andre, Macho, Hogan, and whoever else is in that game. I can't think. There's like 6 characters. But it had the full expanded mod. We had all 6 characters from that WWF 80s game, which was like, I think it was like Jaleka or whoever the hell made it. You can tell when you look at like the sprites, like they actually match the same style as Double Dragon. But it was so fun. Like the original Double Dragon's bloody balls hard game to play. A lot of practice, a lot of credits to finish that game. It's damn hard, and the game cheats its ass off. But when you're playing as the wrestlers, they're all like bigger than the enemies. All these steroid enhanced wrestlers, and it was like great fun. And it actually makes it, for me, it actually made it more enjoyable because you had the advantage over the CPU rather than the CPU beating the hell out of you. You've still got falling down death pits and dynamite and shit like that. But yeah, that's about it for this little casual hangout. Doing a bit of talking about Final Fight and Streets of Rage and the Streets of Fire amazing movie, which we will do a full episode on that movie and a kind of game special next year sometime on Boba Joe. We've got plenty more episodes in the pipeline. Speaking of which, in the next day or two, we'll be doing WCW Beach Blast 1992. We've got Sting versus Cactus Jack. We've got Medusa versus Missy Hyatt in the bikini contest. Look out. And of course, there's Steamboat versus Rick Rude. Very enjoyable event, very enjoyable pay-per-view at a time when wrestling wasn't great from just about any of the promotions, but that was actually really enjoyable. We've got that one coming up. The following week, we're going to be doing, like a week from now, Transformers 1984 catalog. I think I've put in 1984 and 1985 in there, but we're going to be looking at some actual catalog images and maybe do a bit of a wish list, bit of a Christmas wish list. What would we have liked to have picked from that 1984/85 catalog back then? Prime and Sideswipe and Megatron and Starscream, all those guys. And then also coming up from now to the end of the year and into January, we got Die Hard 2, bit of a Christmas special. Toxic Crusaders, doing a full look at that whole line and the first episode of the animated series. And after that, we've got WrestleVision. For WrestleVision, of course, the Macho Man will be he'll be here hanging out with us, letting us know what's going on. And WrestleVision, you might have some special 3D Macho glasses, or who knows, to get their WrestleVision, you probably need your special Macho glasses on. But that'll be fun. That after WrestleMania 1, they did their next pay-per-view from the old WWF was WrestleVision, meant to be part of a series of ongoing pay-per-views, but it was the only one. So it's got a bit of an anomaly. And they do a kind of impromptu tournament thing. It's quite an interesting little fun thing to look back at. And it's quite enjoyable to watch. It's not, I wouldn't call it, I guess I'd call it like a B pay-per-view after the unparalleled success of WrestleMania. I mean, assuming it was, if you believe all the hype. It's quite fun to watch. And before we get on to other WrestleManias, because I think we're up to like 13 or 14 or whatever, and we'll definitely be getting through those up to them, and we might cycle back and do early Rumbles or SummerSlams or whatever next year. Who knows, because I've got them on DVD, so we can definitely do those ones. WrestleVision is quite fun, so we'll be taking a look at that, as well as other things next year. And so if you get a moment, if you can leave a like, or leave a lick. If you want to like lick the screen or your mouse like that, you're quite welcome to, or a tablet phone. Leave a lick or a like. Any of those is quite useful. That's like the New Zealand version. It's like, leave a lick, mate. Leave a bit of a lick. So we're going to finish up there. Thanks for tuning in. Checking out what was going on this impromptu live special, talking about old beat 'em up stuff, and we'll definitely do more video game sort of chats next year too. I'm thinking we might do like a kind of like a top five each. Me and Mark, we picked 5 each, like Mega Drive games that we won. Another one picked like a 5 favorite Super Nintendo ones. So definitely Search Rage will be in there. Probably some Mario, probably some Donkey Kong Country. Very predictable, but what will be the wild card? Who knows? But we'll love you and leave you, and catch you guys next time.
Well, I got to tell you, folks, I had another run-in with that there weird late-night Bill, if that even is his real fucking name. This guy pretended like he wanted an autograph. He thought I could sign his Kenner Superpowers figures or some bullshit. When he came up to me, he tried to strangle me for no good reason. Fucking maniac! Best to play it safe, I hit him in the jaw, and then I had to kick him in the balls and hightail it out of there, I fucking tell you.